Okay, we should be all good to go.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It is 7 o'clock exactly on the dot. I now order the 2083rd regular meeting of the City of College Place City Council. And will the clerk or deputy clerk please take roll call?
Okay. Councilmember Bobbitt,
Present.
Councilmember Cleveland,
Present.
Councilmember Peterson,
Present.
Councilmember Selby,
Present.
Councilmember Sherman,
Present.
Councilmember Boyle.
Present.
We also have with us tonight Administrator Mike Rizzatello, Finance Director Brian Carlton, Public Works Director Robert McAndrews, Police Chief Troy Tamaris, Fire Chief David Winter, Community Development Director John Ricard, City Clerk myself, standing, and Mayor Norma Hernandez. Councilmember Nyhagen has been asked to be excused. You do have a quorum, so you're good to go.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Okay, will you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, it is now time for public comment. Did anyone submit a comment, or would anyone in attendance like to speak?
We do not seem to have anybody in attendance, and I do not believe there were any comments submitted.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to the consent agenda. We are looking to approve the agenda for today, September, no, actually, wait, what's the date today? September 28th, right? September 28th, 2021. Approved council minutes for September 14th, 2021. The salary ordinance update to add positions, and the check register and financials for August 2021, as well as excusing Councilwoman Nyhagen. Are there any items that anyone from the council would like removed from this consent agenda at this time? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion on this agenda? Consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda as read.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Perfect, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it, the motion is passed. We have some presentations today, so we have a promotion to the rank of lieutenant for Robert Benfield by Chief Tamaris. This is exciting.
Mayor, council, thank you. And this is, one of the greatest things I get to do as a chief is to hire and promote. And today is particularly special to hire or to promote Bob Benfield to the rank of lieutenant. Someone who is well deserving of the rank, someone who has worked very hard to promote our organization and get us to where we are today. We have a lot of hard working men and women in our department, and Bob is a leader in that. And, he's also a big reason for our accreditation. He's done a lot to help advance us to that position, and also to recruit and retain the people that we have. So I will go ahead and promote Lieutenant Bob Benfield. So Bob, if you raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Robert Benfield,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully
that I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
discharge the duties of my office
discharge the duties of my office
as prescribed by law
as prescribed by law
and to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
will support the Constitution
will support the Constitution
of
of
the United States
the United States
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
and laws of the state of Washington
and the laws of the state of Washington
and ordinances of the city of College Place
and ordinances of the city of College Place
as a police lieutenant,
as a police lieutenant,
to which position
to which position
I have been appointed.
I have been appointed.
Congratulations. Now we're gonna have Rose go ahead and pin on his badge.
Okay.
And your name there.
Committed to 5 more years.
Have Mary Ann finalize that. Bob, is there anything you would like to say to the mayor and council?
Absolutely. Mayor, city council, Mr. Rizzatello, Roy, I'd just like to tell you how proud I am to do this job. And I want to thank all of you, and I promise to do the best job that I can. So just let you know that I'm here to serve the citizens of College Place.
Congratulations. Julie, congratulations, Lieutenant.
All right, Mayor, we'll turn everything back over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That is always wonderful. Okay, public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight, so we're going to move on to our action items. With the first action item is the purchase of fire captain's pickup and the fire marshal's SUV and surplus existing vehicles. And Mr. McAndrews is going to present on that.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. So a little history on this. Previously, both these vehicles were set, they were approved for lease, and it was going to be a 6-year lease, and that was before my time. Getting here and looking at them makes a lot more sense to purchase the vehicles. It'd be roughly the same amount of money, but we'd have about a 10-year life cycle instead of a 6-year life cycle. And previously, the captain's pickup back in March was actually approved to purchase, and we ordered it, and the manufacturer had to cancel because they, as you guys probably all know, a lot of the manufacturers were having a hard time making vehicles. So that being said, the state bidding closed. We weren't able to order any more vehicles, and just recently that state bidding opened back up, and the rumor on the street is that it's only going to be open until the end of the month. But we're able to purchase both of these vehicles through state pricing. And so I'm asking for, or recommending that we purchase these 2 vehicles.
Thank you. So let's go through council members for questions or comments. We'll start with Council Member Bobbitt.
When you come back to me, I'm still reviewing my data.
Okay, Council Member Cleveland,
No questions.
Council Member Peterson,
No questions.
Councilwoman Selby,
No questions.
Councilwoman Sherman,
No questions here either.
and Councilwoman Boyle.
No questions, thanks.
All right, Council Member Bobbitt, they didn't give you much time to review.
No questions. Thank
All
you.
right. Okay, so seeing that there's no further questions, is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to authorize the purchase of pickup and SUV for the fire department and surplus vehicle number UT 303, the 2006 Ford Expedition, VIN number 1FPU16526LA61610, and vehicle number UT 304, 2006 Chevrolet 1500 pickup, VIN number 3GCEC14V86236151.
Woo,
That counts as my vision test for the year, right?
So
you were brave to take that one on. Is there a
Excellent
second?
job.
Second.
Councilmember Selby, I'll second.
Okay, any additional discussion? All right, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. The motion is passed. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Robert, for that. Now, next item is the removal of tubular markers from the cycle track on Southwest 4th Street and Southwest Academy Way. And Mr. McAndrews is going to present on that as well.
Yeah, so good evening again. This, as I'm sure all of you are aware, the cycle track got put in on 4th and on Academy a couple of years ago. And along with that, through the grant funding, the design included those tubular markers, and we were under the impression that the grant funding required that and required that we kept those. And so that being said, it's become quite a maintenance trouble spot for us, or it's the cycle track is not wide enough for us to get our sweeper in there. Leaves and debris and stuff accumulate, especially in the fall. Debris makes it into our storm system, which is problematic, and it's just hard to keep that cycle track clean. So we reached out to the TIB, the funding agency, and asked them if it was necessary, and they said if it's a maintenance problem, go ahead and remove them, and you don't need them in the next phase that's coming up. And so that being said, speaking with our design engineers, if we don't put those in the next phase, we don't have to relocate the sidewalk that's there, which is a significant savings. And their original estimate came over quite a bit over the budget that we had and over the grant funding that we had set aside. And so preliminary numbers look like we can save roughly $165,000 on the next phase if we don't do those tubular markers. So that being said, I guess I'm recommending that we go ahead and remove the markers from the existing phase, so that our city staff can conduct maintenance and that we have a seamless cycle track when the next phase goes under construction. Any questions?
All right, let's go through council members. Councilmember Bobbitt,
So Robert, I assume that the line markings will remain, just removing those markers.
That is correct. Yeah, all the pavement markings would stay in place. None of that would change. I believe it's a 2-foot buffer that is laid out there between the cycle track and the roadway, and that would stay exactly the same, and that design would be essentially mimicked in the upcoming phase as well.
Thank you, Robert. No other questions.
Mr. Cleveland,
Are any no parking signs or anything of that nature going to go up? Because I feel like it would be a temptation for some to say, "Hey, free parking."
When I drove it the other day, I had that thought as well. And what I would propose is that we wait and see how it goes. And if it turns into something where we're having issues with people trying to park where they're not, then we would sign accordingly. Just putting up a lot of signs can become expensive and create other maintenance. So if they're not needed, I'd hate to put them up, but if they become needed, then I would absolutely say, yes, let's put up some signs.
Thank you.
Mr. Peterson,
That sounds like a great idea. I was just riding my bike through there the other day. Those are starting to have a high mortality rate. And so, yeah. So I think this is a good move. Yes, thank you.
Ms. Selby,
I think this is a good move. I think aesthetically, it'll make that whole area look better. Because it looks good, and then there's these weird gray things sticking up. So I'm in favor.
Ms. Sherman,
No question.
Ms. Boyle,
No questions. Thank you.
Robert, I have one question in conjunction with Mr. Cleveland's question. Is it possible to paint the curbs? I see already there's some yellow painting on part of the curb. Would it be easy to paint the rest of that curb to try to at least give a hint that there's no parking there? Or would that just add more trouble as well?
I would lean against painting curbs. That becomes quite a bit of maintenance issue as well, because you have to go back and repaint them every other year, if not every year. And I know typically the equipment that we have isn't the best for painting curbs. And so city staff have been doing it by hand. And so that would be a lot of curb painting by hand. Again, it could be something that we could consider if we start having parking issues. But I think the way the cycle track is laid out, I think it should be pretty self-explanatory, but again, there's always one or two people that just don't see it.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Are there any other questions? All right, is there a recommendation on this action item?
With Councilmember Selby, I will move to authorize city crews to remove the tubular markers from the cycle track on Southwest 4th Street and Southwest Academy Way.
Second.
All right, any additional discussion? All right, let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, it's unanimous. The ayes have it. The motion is passed. Next item, let's see, we are on the resolution of support for broadband grants from the State Public Works Board and the Washington State Broadband Office. And Mr. Rizzatello is going to present on that topic.
Hey, thank you. This is another grant opportunity. We're trying to go after all of them. So through some way, shape, or form, we actually built the broadband network through this community, and then Walla Walla is following suit in their community as well. So Public Works Trust Fund, they basically have a grant that covers up to around 75% of the cost for the project. And then there's a 25% overhang on it. I ended up getting an email last week that through the State American Rescue Plan Act funds, the Department of Commerce has this discretionary amount of up to basically 25% or $2 million that can act as a match to other grants you get from the state or the feds. So this resolution essentially has two purposes to it. A, to get the Public Works Board money, and then B, to get the matching grant money from the State Broadband Office, because the concept is that if you get both of them, in essence, you end up actually maxing out the project cost, and then I believe then we wouldn't really be out on anything. So that would be the goal. Whether or not that comes to fruition is a whole nother matter, but that is the attempt.
All right, let's go through council members, and we'll start with Councilmember Bobbitt.
No questions. I'm all for it.
Councilmember Cleveland,
I'll echo what Jerry said.
Councilmember Peterson,
No questions.
Councilmember Selby,
No questions. I think this is awesome.
Councilmember Sherman,
No questions. I agree. It looks great.
and Councilmember Boyle.
No questions. Thanks, Mike.
All right, so if there's no questions, is there a motion on this resolution?
I'll motion to adopt resolution number 21-046, which is a resolution of support for Public Works Board and Washington State Broadband Office matching grants.
Councilmember Boyle, I'll second.
Great, we got a first and a second. Any additional discussion? Let's vote then. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, it's unanimous. The ayes have it. The motion is passed. All right, next is the ROW dedication, Sharp annexation at 995 Northeast C Street. And Mr. Rickard's going to present on that.
Yes, thank you. So when I first brought this to you last council meeting, we had not sent the legal description through to our surveyor for review. And it was upon that review, we discovered that we only have a half street right of way of 25 feet in front of the property that's annexing. Could you pull up the annexation exhibit map, that first item there for us? So you'll see in front of the red area that's being annexed, we only have the 25 feet. To the east, we have 35 feet on C Street, and then further to the west towards Della, it drops back down to 30 feet. There is a public need for additional right-of-way in this area as part of the Goodwill project. There will be a rapid flashing beacon pedestrian actuated crosswalk installed on the west side of the DCO and C Street intersection. Where our current right-of-way lies right now, it's just right behind the 5-foot sidewalk on the north side of the road, and we would need additional right-of-way in that area to place the base of the sign so that it doesn't obstruct the sidewalk. We are allowed under state law to condition annexations for right-of-way dedications. We've done that in the past over on Lambert in the area. So I have spoken with the applicants, and they want to move forward with the annexation and are agreeable to the dedication. So that would bring us with, after the dedication, we would have a 30-foot right-of-way through there.
All right, thank you. Go through council members for questions or comments, and Mr. Bobbitt.
So that is we'll have a 30-foot right of way for the proposed annex property. We still have a 25-foot on the property adjacent to that.
Yes, that's correct. The property directly to the west, which is in the county, we would ask most likely at that time of annexation of that piece for right of way as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions?
Mr. Peterson,
No questions.
Ms. Selby,
No questions.
Ms. Sherman,
No questions. I'm glad we found this now, not later.
That's why we have our properties reviewed by the surveyors.
Ms. Boyle.
No questions. Thanks.
All right, if there's no further discussion, is there a motion on this action item?
I'll make a motion to require as a condition of annexation, a 5-foot right-of-way dedication to the public for future growth and expansion as determined by the city.
Great, do we have a second?
Second, Peterson.
All right, is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion's passed. The ayes have it, the motion is passed. Okay. We're just zipping along. Next item is the administrative reports. Is that, yeah, moving on to the administrative reports. We have several administrative reports, starting with the fiscal year 2020 financial statement and federal audit results. And Mr. Carlton will present on that.
Thank you, Mayor. Some council members were involved with our exit meeting last Monday, I believe, in which the state auditor's office presented our audit for 2020. I was asked to just go over the final results of that audit and kind of run through with all council. I'll just share my screen here and bring up, at the time I submitted the information for the meeting tonight. The audit was not available from the state auditor's office. It was posted yesterday. So as a result, I've just included it on for today. Bear with me a second. So the audit, the state auditor's office completes, they look at 3 areas. They did an accountability audit, they did a financial statement audit, and then they did a federal audit, which relates to us having federal grant money exceeding $750,000, and that related to one of the wells projects through one of the Department of Health loan that is transferred through the federal government to the state and then to us, therefore qualifying as a federal. So they do a single audit just on that particular project. First, looking at the accountability audit, turned out really well. They look at the city operations, complied in all material aspects with applicable state laws, regulations, and its own policies, and provided adequate controls over safeguarding of public resources. Some of the areas they looked at, what they do each year is they pick certain areas they're going to target on, and they go into detail on those areas. Those areas are listed here. Self-insurance for unemployment, our financial condition, contract compliance with cash receipting deposits, deposit timeliness. They looked at accounts payable with general disbursements and electronic funds transfers, and they looked at gross wages calculations and payroll. So they did not find, it's in their opinion that the city's financial statements are in compliance with, that goes into the federal grant program. I'm sorry about that. So this section relates to the financial aspects of the federal grant program, and they evaluated the internal controls and tested compliance, and they determined that there was no findings and we met all the requirements. The next section relates to the financial statement audit, and which they look at financial statements and the federal awards. And under the summary here, they've issued an unmodified opinion on the fair presentation of the city's financial statements in accordance with the regulatory basis of accounting. It says unmodified because in order to fall under GAAP, we must present in an accrual basis. So we present in a cash basis. So there is they offer unmodified opinion on that. There is no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in our financial statements. So that's a good thing. And then into the federal awards, their internal control over the major programs. They reported no deficiencies in the design or operation of internal control over federal major award programs. They also looked at material weaknesses and did not identify any as such. So all in all, it was an excellent audit. They did not have any findings. They did not provide any management letters about any deficiencies, and there was no exit recommendations. There was 4 small items they found in the notes to the financial statements that were corrected before they issued their final report. So all in all, it was an excellent audit. Is there any questions?
All right. It was an excellent audit. Nothing but raise for the team. So let's go to council members for any other questions or comments. Councilmember Bobbitt,
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Mr. Peterson,
Yeah, I sat through that exit conference and proud of the team. That's pretty amazing. No audit adjustments and to have you could tell that the state staff were very impressed also.
Ms. Selby?
I don't have any questions, but congratulations and thanks for the hard and diligent, careful work by everybody on the team.
Ms. Sherman?
No questions for me either. Good job, Brian.
Ms. Boyle?
No questions. Just great job for keeping that so clean, guys.
And you know, it was such a strange meeting because it was so clean. It's like we felt we should have had something to say or comment or account for, but there was just nothing. There was nothing to say because it was just beautiful. So again, congratulations to you and Desiree, Brian. We appreciate it. Okay, next is the water, wastewater, storm utility rate models update. Oh, and Mr. Carlton, you're still up?
Yes. So every 3 years, I'll just share my screen in a second. Every 3 years, we conduct a utility rate model study. We completed that study last year that was presented to council in 2020. We use that as a basis for determining how the utilities are performing and also for use in approving our utility rate increases each year. So as far as adjusting the utility rate models, since it was done last year, it's a 3-year period, we technically wouldn't redo the study until 2024. But Mike asked me to present to council where we're at on utility rate models in relation to, but now that budget's coming up and where we stand as far as actuals. Let me just, can everyone see that? No? Maybe share my screen. Not working.
Share your other screen, Brian.
There, can you see that? No?
I could see that there was a Zoom browser up.
Yeah,
Oh, you saw that?
yeah.
Okay. Can you see that utility analysis?
I just see the Zoom page.
Yeah.
Just bear with me a second. I need to have this. There, can you see that now?
Yeah.
Okay, so 3 utilities, water, wastewater, stormwater. We did the utility rate models in detail. On each of those, what are the key drivers are when we're doing this rate analysis is we're looking at the revenues. We look at capital projects. We look at operations and maintenance costs. And we look at the debt and debt forecasts. So what I did in this little analysis is I took the where we were on actual 2020 revenues, expenditures, and then I looked at what we're forecasting for the end of this year, and then what the 2020 rate model had on those categories. You can see for the water, definitely a change in revenues from 2020 to 21 forecast, mainly due to a 5% increase in the utility rates we put in last year. And I think somewhat of a volume effect. You can see in the 2021 rate model, slightly less than what we're forecasting for this year. But when you look at the expenditures, our expenditures are less than what we had forecasted, and technically less than our 2020 actual. But the rate model shows a net impact of a positive number in the rate model. It looks like in the forecast, a slight reduction in our fund balance. And you can see 2020 actual, we actually had a $193,000 reduction in the fund balance, and that was an anticipated reduction. In the wastewater models, you can see the revenues, how they've trended. We're definitely showing higher revenues in all three of the utilities based on what's in the rate model, but it also associated with the costs are either similar or a little bit lower depending on which utility you're looking at. For wastewater, we show there was a net gain in the fund balance in our forecast of $567,000 this year, and the rate model showed a $287,000 increase in fund balance. The stormwater, you can see that the revenues, our actuals were 643 last year. The forecast for this year is 696,000, and our rate model was only 546,000. You have to recall that we just had started the storm utility back in 2019, so it was relatively new when we were doing the rate model. So it does show a little bit of a variance. You can see in the net on the stormwater that the fund balance for 2021 forecast is going up 245,000, and the rate model only 119. All in all, what I think this presents is that although we're off slightly in revenues and expenses in the rate model, our forecast is actually showing better for wastewater and stormwater than the utility, than the rate model did, as opposed to the water where we're showing slightly worse than what we showed in the rate model. That being said, I'll just bring up the models here. I won't go through these in detail, just a bit of the highlights. Here's our 2021 amount, where we're showing the slight surplus in the fund with a 5% increase. 2022, we're again showing a 5% increase. And with revenue, you know,
Brian, I don't think the screen changed. Are you?
Yeah, it didn't change for me.
Didn't change?
No.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, we're still seeing the rate analysis.
Yeah, I guess I have to share each one. There, can everyone see that?
Yeah.
We see a spreadsheet.
Yeah, and this is the summary of the rate model. It's broken up into multiple sheets that do multiple calculations. As I mentioned at the beginning, basically breaking it down into those key drivers. What we need to focus on is, you know, where we're at on the surplus and deficiency over the year and what the percentage increase in the yearly adjustment rate is. So for 2022, we're looking at a 5% increase. The rate model does extend out over, you know, a 6-7 year period. So in order, you know, if you have capital expenditures that are a large amount in future years, that takes into account in the rate model at the rate increases that it's need to keep the fund in the surplus. All in all, what this is saying is that we're going to take that 5% increase and we're going to put it into the budget this year. And of course, next week we have our first budget presentation at the workshop. So we're going to be using that. We're going to be using that revenue number and bringing it in to see where our fund balances end up. All in all, what this will relate to is we'll ask for approval of the rate increases at budget time when the budget's approved. So just some information for everybody. Also, in conversation with Mike, this was done every 3 years. It was done by outside agency, We did it internally last year. And based on the analysis, and if I look back at that, the rate analysis I was showing you, we're pretty close. You know, it's off a little bit, but you're always going to be off somewhat. But I think we're relatively close in our net numbers for the rate analysis. So to me, that's proving that this model is working, and that our percentage increases seem to be working with how we're anticipating the expenditures and the revenues. I'll just bring up another sheet.
So Brian, hey, Lauren here, real quick question. So in the expenses, we're covering the bond costs and the operating expense costs, correct? Under the expense category?
Yeah, on this summary sheet, it combines it all together, the debt financing and associated reinvestment in the different utilities.
So
it's all included in there.
So the surplus, we saw, you know, well, I don't know if I'd call it a significant surplus, but that goes to the fund balance.
Yeah, and that's a running surplus. So that's not a surplus each year. That's actually a running surplus. So you can see that the surplus, this is, can you everybody see the wastewater page?
Yeah.
So you can see we're having a surplus, a net surplus each year.
And I mean, one thing I would add, especially with the wastewater fund, where it's key we're doing that surplus, is that keep in mind, we're trying to build up our local match. Well, you'll see it when I go over it in the capital facility plan, but we have that state mandated $25 million treatment plant coming up. So
yeah, and what we have in this last year when we did this, we had actually put in, I'm not sure if you can see that sheet. Did it transfer over?
Yeah. Yep.
So you can see at the time last year, it was in the budget for 2023 at $18.6 million. Of course, it's going to be higher than that. It's looking to be more in the $25 million range. Although in this model, we did put in that the fund was only going to have to take a hit of, it was just under $5 million that we expected to come out of probably a bond for the city. So that financing was built into the model. And of course, that takes effect on the fund balance and what the rates are moving forward.
Mayor, this is Lauren. I got an emergency call I need to take care of. We had quorum. We have action items. It's okay if I take off?
We're good here.
Okay, I've got
you.
an emergency I got to take care of. I just got up from my parents. So, all right, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Go take care.
So here again in the wastewater, you can see our rate increases are in the yellow. This year was 3%. Next 2020 or this year was 3%. Next year I'm anticipating a 4%, slightly higher in 2023 due to the wastewater treatment plant work, and then it kind of sets back to 3% a year after that. And you can see we maintain a surplus each one of those years, and this is where we see our ending fund balance does stay positive for that time frame with a slight surplus net. The last model, I'll have to stop share and bring up the other one. Just bear with me a second. So this is the stormwater utility, and you can see that we started in 2019, so we're kind of learning as we go on year to year. So I think that if any of the models need to be redone, it's probably this model, although the increases are, 3% a year, and we seem to be operating at a higher surplus than what was expected. So we'll be looking at that rate increase as we approach the budget period. A lot smaller utility as far as total dollars, but it's still showing that we're operating where we expected. And if you recall, by that initial sheet I gave you, they're actually operating at better than what we had expected. In conversations with Mike, we're going to look at starting next year, probably redoing this model every year. It takes some work, but we do it in-house, and it would better reflect where we're at and be able to adjust it on a year-to-year basis. So we're going to implement that change next year. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to initiate that this year. So ultimately, what will happen is we'll use these base figures in the utilities in the budget, and that'll be presented to you next week. So we'll see where we end up. We just completed our expenditures from all the department heads on last Friday, so we'll be combining that. And it's shortly here, I'm going to give you a little presentation on their revenues. Is there any questions?
Right. Mr. Bobbitt, any questions or comments?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like the rate models and the actual expenses, we're tracking fairly close, at least better than our best guesses.
Yeah, I think it's within 5 to 7%. So I think that's a pretty good estimate.
Yeah, I kind of interpret that as the rate models are actually giving us a accurate picture, well, somewhat accurate right now. We'll find out as time goes by, right?
Right, exactly.
Thank you, Ryan.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Selby,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Sherman,
No questions. Thanks.
Ms. Boyle.
No questions.
All right. Moving right along, let's go to the fiscal year 2022 preliminary budget revenues, and Mr. Carlton's continuing to report.
All right, I'll bring up, I have a little presentation. This one will be pretty quick. Leave Mike lots of time to go through capital. All right, I'll just share my screen again. And it's not, I don't see it. Shelley, can you bring up the presentation? It's not coming up for me.
Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so now that we're into the 22 budget process, one of the first things we look at is our major revenue sources. The assumptions we made for 2022, we're expecting the COVID-19 impact to subside. Keeping our fingers crossed on that one. Hopefully it doesn't last another year or half year. We're expecting the business activity in College Place to continue at historical increases. And we're expecting to, or we're going to recommend to council to approve the maximum 1% allowable property tax increase. All these assumptions have been used in the anticipated revenue. Some additional information at this point. In this analysis, our grant revenues are not included. As a result, we need to have the CIP complete. Then we'll use that to determine what our grants for funding are required, and we'll incorporate that into the presentation next Tuesday. Also have not included the interfund transfers in there. Those are dictated somewhat on how the ending fund balances are. So those will get created as we work through the revenues and expenditures. Also, at this point in time, there wasn't a lot of detail available from the county on the property tax estimates for next year. That being said, if you can go to the second page, I hope everyone can see that. These are our major sources of revenue that we've incorporated. They're listed on the right by the different funds and the major sources. I'll go through the big ones. What I try to do here is give what the actual was in 2020, what the 2020 budget had in it, 2021 budget, 2021 forecast, and what we're going to put in for the preliminary budget meetings moving forward. Of course, all these numbers can be modified as we see, but these are the initial targets. You can see the big items really are property tax. We did put in. You can see that we're trending slightly ahead of our budget for 2021. Our forecast at $2.86 million. We're putting in the 22 budget at this point. We're putting in a 5% increase over the 2021 budget. We didn't put in the forecast based on the 2021 forecast. The reasons for that, pretty simple. We can receive property taxes in the first part of 2021 that relate to 2020. And in my opinion, that sort of inflates the 2021 forecast number. So we'll just see how that works into the total budget. Second line item is sales tax. We're anticipating a slight increase over the 2021 budget. You can see the forecast is quite high, but we decided to, be a bit more, I don't like to say pessimistic, but take a little lighter approach on the increases and see how that works into the total budget numbers. The third line item is B&O tax. Again, we're looking at a number in relation to our budget and prior year actuals and not growing it by a lot, or actually it's shrinking just a little bit. Few the other significant numbers you can see we have the ARPA revenues in there for this year and for next year. So that's a big number in our revenues. But there'll be associated expenditures with that. Most of the other ones you can see trend pretty close to what we were expecting and not taking big increases into account. Then we get in further down into the bottom third of the page. You can see our water revenues. Those numbers are taken off the presentation I just give you. We are showing an increase in all the utilities, and that's based on the 5%, 3%, and 3% increases for each one of those utilities. And then our capital reserve account are down below, which you can see the trend that we're anticipating in those. All in all, when you look at the bottom, you can see based on prior year, bottom left-hand column, just under $14 million in revenue. And then this year budget, we're anticipating $17.6 million. Don't forget, there's a one-time revenue source in there, $1.3 million from ARPA from the feds. So we're showing a total increase in revenue for next year of $240,000. A pretty small number, but at this point, we'll see how that works in with the expenditures the department heads are submitting to us. See how it affects the ending fund balances. So that's a lot of numbers on that page, but that's the numbers we're moving in the initial budget for 2022. Are there any questions?
All right, so let's take a look. My apologies for kind of skipping out there for a little bit. Thank goodness for hotspots. Okay, Councilmember Bobbitt.
No, I appreciate all the work that's gone into keeping track of all this and sharing that with us. Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Ms. Selby.
No questions, thank you.
All right, Ms. Sherman,
No questions. Thank you.
Ms. Boyle.
No questions, thanks.
All right, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Let's take a look. Now we are going on to the draft of the fiscal year 2022 to 2027 capital facilities plan, and Mr. Rizzatello has the honor of presenting that.
Hey, thank you. Well, with this time of year, I try to present the initial level drafts of each of the 6-year plans, and I'll go over quickly each of the projects. That way you're aware of it as we're working on resorting and shuffling stuff as we go further along in this budget process and future meetings. I'll just have this as an admin report since you'll be aware of what's in it. So at this point, I'll try. Shelly, could you enable it where I could share my screen? Saying I can't share.
It's probably someone else that's currently sharing. At least they were.
Oh, here we go. Let's see now. Okay, share screen and then. Okay, is it showing up for everyone?
Yes.
Okay. I will try to go through this as quick as I can because, as you all know from years past, this goes pretty long. So apologies for that. But this basically demonstrates this. The first year is more concrete. So at that point, we're trying to identify what capital projects we're doing. This plan goes over everything above $5,000, and in subsequent years, it's more of a wish list since, you know, we get a lot of grant funding up in here. So trying to figure out how to move forward through these projects. Okay, so the first pages, it's your typical capital facility plan. So it just goes over the project team, table of contents, what is the capital facility plan. A lot of the definitions are like what you'd see in the Growth Management Act. As far as language highlighted in red, this goes through, I would say, a lot of questions residents have. So just from the get-go, it clarifies things such as for state and federal grants, the only roads that we can get those type of grants for are what's called federally classified ones. So Rose, College, Larch, to Morrison, Academy Way, Fourth, ones like that. And that's why we petitioned to add scenic view, commercial, drive a portion, and Dampson is federally classified because for local roads, we're on our own. We don't have, we aren't able to get grant funds for that. And then for state definitions, the budget means it'll occur in 2022. Plan means for the future. For FY 2022 priority projects, a lot of these you've heard of in past years, but they have augmented numbers. Some are newer, depending. So I'll go over key ones. Well, number 6, finally wrapping that up, and that's been dragging on due to a delay in the state engineering manual for it, where it went through an additional review and several other things. So they'll actually wrap up this year, and that's a combination of drinking water funds and an appropriation. Wastewater treatment plant, that'll really start beginning this year because we're positioning it to get the final engineering plans out to bid this thing. The heavy construction will be going more into 2023, but assembling the total finance package has already started, and that'll conclude within 2022. Regional Fire Training Tower, that'll be going 4 bikes, so continuation of 4th. That'll be in here. We kept the costs around the same because since we have to, since we're pulling out the delineators, there's some savings there, so we'll be able to live within our means on that. Lions Park, went over that several times with a variety of grants and financing and allocation of REIT 2. We're going to be in good shape for that. Southwest Majanier, the engineering will start on that next year. Construction will be a following year. And then Council Chambers, the AV system, which will enable us to do the hybrid meetings in person. The bid's going to be closing on that soon, and then we'll be able to get to doing the engineering drawings and actually get that underway and get going on that. So those are some key priority ones. Page 6, this goes over the fact that this has to tie per state law to our comprehensive plan. And then just going over the fact that it goes through our strategic plan as well. Section 7 here on page 10 goes over a general process to get this going. Page 11 goes over our successes this year, which even coming out of COVID, we're doing good. We're doing the Southwest Sewer, Meadowbrook, Destito, a lot of things going on this year. Page 12 starts to go into the graphs essentially of where we're at. So FY 2022, the bigger expenditures get into water system at around 33%, parks at 22% because Lions Park's a big project, and then that's followed up basically by the streets at 18%. And then general admin, community development stuff at 18, since we're renovating council chambers. As it goes into subsequent years, then the lion's share really ends up going to your wastewater at 31%, the water at 17%, and then streets at 28%. Going to page 13, FY 2022, it amounts just shy of 15 million, so 14.9 million. Our big cost centers is water because pretty much a lot of that's just with those key projects I went over. We'll dive in each one shortly. And then this goes into 2022 to 2027. Totals around 91 million. The reason for increase is because there's a couple of projects in here that are in here because if we get the federal money, it's coming out of the American Rescue Plan Act through Economic Development Administration. It's large dollar items, like with the broadband at 4 million, the community center grant that we're putting in for about 8. So that's what's driving this thing up. Page 15 goes over anticipated revenue sources. This one I always view as eye-opening. So pretty much we are able to mass enough funds locally to provide a local match for grants, but to achieve what we do not have the resources in and of ourselves to do it. So if you look at a capital facility plan, it's based on several assumptions, but the general boilerplate is that the combination of grants and then to a minor degree developer contributions, but 41% grants, 52% overall is outright other people's money between either granting agencies or developers or so forth. So a lot of that is prefaced on that. Page 16 goes over prioritization. High means we have to do it, we need to do it. There's a regulatory or condition issue driving it. Medium means that it needs to happen at some point, but isn't an immediate concern. And then low means that it's pretty much driven by that we were awarded a grant or some other external condition, but that won't happen unless those external conditions are met. Page 17 just has it's a synthesis of the projects throughout the geography of the city. Page 18 dovetails into facilities. So page 19 goes to City Hall. Like any building, you have to keep it up. So there's several improvements here. Next year, the big thing is getting that AV system in so we can do hybrid meetings and do just upgrade to it that we've been trying to position ourselves for some time. 2023 goes into conference room furnishings and then renovating the Sally Point, the jail area. So for those of you who don't know, the back part of the community development side has a former jail in it from when the police were over there and we had our own jail. Now we use the county jail and we need more space for staff. People are piled on top of each other here. Luckily, we're still able to follow the COVID restrictions, but you definitely have to be creative because spaces have a premium here. And because that jail cell area has like full-on concrete walls and there's a dramatic amount of renovation that needed to occur, to do that back part would be about $800,000. So that's why we kicked that out into 2023, but it needs to happen with the growing city. 2024 just gets into minor stuff like a beam repair and paint. 2025 renovation, and 2026 would be the last part of the parking lot. I will note that with the AV system, OPMA upgrade, that was in the ARPA allocations that y'all approved back in July. Fire department, 2022, getting the staircase fixed because that was difficult to get that lined out this year just because contractors are very busy with all this money hitting the streets. So it's driving up cost. Regional training tower, to my understanding, City of Walla Walla finally is getting ready to award that project. The thing is, it ties back to that previous comment I just made. Costs are higher. So if you look compared to past capital plans, went from 50,000 a year up to 64,000. It would be for a 5-year duration to pay it back, but that's something to keep in mind. And then going into future years, like renovating the dorm rooms, because again, to keep our fire department operational, we depend on a lot of volunteers, gotta make them feel comfortable. So that's a key thing. And then going into 2024, dealing with the gas heaters, and 2025 hot water pump. Police department, 2022, this deals with wrapping up some projects that are in the ARPA allocation, so the gun range building and so forth, getting the roof on it. 2023 would be backup generation, and then 2024 deals with a water heater, and then earmarked for renovation of said department. The next section gets into key infrastructure, and it's broken up by essentially function. So going into parks, page 24 goes into Lions Park, pretty much for projects that we're doing at occurring expense, just to make sure we have enough to cover Lions Park. I'm trying to do programming all clear, so Lions Park is the priority one, because with this project, I mean, as you're moving around stuff, you really have one shot at it. You can't really put in a splash pad and then leave the pond and be like, oh, I gotta go run a bulldozer back through there, get to the pond. You have one shot to get this right. So Blue Zones will be helping us with this because it is a marquee project for them. So they'll be writing some additional grants to help us out. But you'll see splash pad, perimeter walk-in path, softball multi-purpose field, inclusive playground, restrooms. And as we're getting into these project pages, you'll see I have a picture of them to upper right, map of where it's at to the lower right, and then to the lower left. I have a percentage of how I pay for it that breaks out the various grants or funds. So that's Lions Park project. Community Center project, this one will be brought to life if we get that federal EDA money. Ballpark cost has been around 8 million. The concept would be to replace the community center with a new one should we get that grant, and it's working with the park board, you all, and then Lions Club to envision what this thing will be. Harvest Meadows Park, that would get kicked out of 2023 because again we're trying to leave room for Lions Park so it's done right. In Harvest Meadows, it'd be welcome sign, picnic shelter. Key amenities other parks have, and REAP 2 is the funding mechanism that we have to help with the parks and so forth. Park development at Stone Creek, I have this going in 2023 to 2024. As that property across from the high school develops, the land mass is essentially going to trigger a park requirement. However, to do it where it's of regional nature, it's going to be a full-on partnership between us, school district, because school now has property out that way, and then essentially the various grants and some of our own funds. So a concept would be to develop some sort of regional sports thing out there, and it'd be writing more RCO grants and so forth. Veterans Park, that gets kicked out to 2025 because I mean, it is a new park, but it is missing amenities. So estimated total cost would be $100,000, and we're looking at restrooms, picnic shelter, basketball court, really adding amenities out there because that neighborhood is a little bit separated from the rest of the community. So really trying to add more assets out there. We believe developer fees in the future should be able to cover that since there is additional land adjacent atop Martin Airfield. Page 29 gets the federal classified roadways. That's just a visualization of the ones we can get grants for. So purple, the yellow, the red, and the green we can get grants for. The grayed out ones we're on our own. B, full corridor projects on page 30. What full corridor means is that not only are we reconstructing a road, but replacing stuff underneath it. So water, wastewater, storm, things of that sort. So to get into that, the first one is Majanier Road. A lot of this is being triggered by the fact that we annexed it in, but then also that land mass that's going to be developed over the next several years. That means additional traffic, so it needs to be brought up to an urban standard. We believe the cost on this is around 4.8 million. We've been very successful at grants on this. So there is MPO funds from Metropolitan Planning Organization. They'll be liquid shortly that we'll be using for engineering. There was a federal highway bill that was passed a couple months ago that's actually separate from the infrastructure bill. And we were able to shove this in the highway bill for some construction money. So there's an allocation there for that. And then basically a remainder will be a combination of developers, street fund, REAP money. That's that one. Birch Avenue from 4th to 6th. This one really needs to be done. If you bike it, walk it, the road's falling apart, and we're going to have to do it anyway because you'll see later on in this book, but the water tower, we need to seismically retrofit it, and we're likely going to get a FEMA grant for it. But in order to do the retrofit and do an outfall, we essentially need to put a new wider storm pipe down Birch from mid block up to 4th. So regardless, you're going to end up ripping up the street. So the concept is that, as you recall, we put in money for road fixes unspecified in the ARPA allocation. The concept is that we'll use that unspecified to pay for the engineering this year, and we'll position this project for construction the following year, and that'll give us time to get the engineering done right, and then go after some storm grants and things like that to make this happen, as well as the storm utility to pay for it because it is a storm project. 12th to large, this is one we continue to file state grants for. This would be a total reconstruction of 12 from College of Larch, because this is, I would say, one of our last federal classifieds that hasn't been touched, and it's in rough shape. So this would reconstruct half a mile and deal with the whole sundry list of utilities. And as you can see, a lot of this is being driven by the TIB grant that we keep going after. And then there's also opportunities through that infrastructure bill that's being installed federally. It's been submitted for it. And then MPO funds on the various utilities taking their fair share.
Quick question on that project, Mike.
Huh?
Quick question on that project. Would we be widening the sidewalks at all like we did down College, or don't even think that far ahead yet?
I don't believe we would be like widening them that much. We would widen them so at least they're like 6 feet wide, but to do a 10-footer, that wouldn't really be practical. So, I mean, I've walked that enough where I know we'll have to do minor widening because there are parts along there that are like 4 or 5 feet. So we'll do some minor widening, but nothing substantial.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So that's 12th. 10th is a companion to the 10th Street that was done last year. So in this case, it would be to repave it, put in appropriate storm infrastructure, because as you can see in the picture, it drains right into Garrison Creek, which that isn't how roads are supposed to be. So this would deal with reconstruction and then also fixing some water underneath that has some problems. So this will be a candidate to get some ecology grant money, and then the remainder would be basically utility funds from storm and water. Birch Avenue, 2nd or 4th, this one we have projected out for 2024, and the key driver there is water and street. It's in rough shape. It needs to be improved. 12th, this would be out to 2025. So this is dealing with the remainder from Larch to Myra. So fixing the utilities underneath and then rebuilding it. Again, the driver on this is a TIB grant or a federal grant, and then the utilities come in for their respective share. Cedar Ave, this is a local road, so that means it's on us. There is an alternative source which we'll try for. I'm hopeful by this time eventually it'll pan out. The concept would be to go after a legislative appropriation. We almost had it a year ago, and then it got edged out at the last minute. I'm hopeful, but that's why I have it medium going out to 2026, because we'll just have to keep bugging the legislators essentially to help us on that one, because that road really needs help. And then Dewey Drive is another one. That's a local road too. And I have that being split basically between streets, which is essentially a pass over from occurring expense, and the remainder would be between water and REIT. Not REIT 2, the first REIT. And then Sky is 2027, and then that one's another local road, and then it's fixing some water underneath it and being split between the street and then the water funds, and then trying to see what other exotic funding mechanisms are out there to make it happen. But it is a local road, which impairs our ability to get grants. Storm projects, this is dealing with storm only. So we're established 2 programs that we whittle through over time, so we're in compliance. First one is our outfall programming. It's putting filters on the outfalls because you can no longer just dump stormwater without any sort of treatment. That's against the permit. So the estimate is that we'll be doing these like every other year just because of the dramatic cost increases and getting the filters, getting everything else. So we'd be doing this every other year. And basically we have it projected where it's essentially a split 50-50 between the utility and then ecology for stormwater. They have a lot of grant money, but yeah, it's pretty much a 1-to-1 match. So we have to have skin in the game. And we have a wide variety of outfalls to deal with. That map that has all the dots is every outfall. Drywall, Spencer went over this the last time. This would be on an every other year program as well. This, while it looks expensive, we are hopeful this will mitigate us having to do a detention basin. As you recall in the previous year's capital plan, when we thought we were going to get forced to do that, detention basin's over $6 million. Doing this, as you can see, where it's 80,000 every other year, a lot cheaper than 6 million. So again, a split between ecology money and the utility. Storm decant facility. Now this one, ecology is on us to get going. So we're aggressively pursuing grants for it. So the concept is that engineering will occur next year, construction would be the following year. And the concept is that these score very high in the ecology grant programs, especially for hardship communities like ours and ones that are new permittees. So ecology grant would be 75%, our utility would kick in the 25%, because that kind of stuff's a priority for them. Southeast 8 was another priority in that storm plan y'all passed about a year ago. So that needs some improvement near the Garrison Creek crossing, and that price is $400,000. Now, if you look from past capital plans, the deviation in cost is because if you recall, Parametrics did like 2/3 of a plan, but the costs were off, and Parametrics came in when JUB came in when we fired Parametrics and completed the plan. Ecology approved it, and these are more concrete numbers that we can have faith in. Street projects. This means that it's just fixing the street and we aren't doing utilities underneath. So it's just mainly street stuff. So chip seal, this is a project that we do every year. Some people like it, some people don't, but it extends the life of our roads by about a decade, which is key for our local roads, since, as I said, they don't have a funding source really. And the local roads in and of themselves are on like over a 200-year replacement schedule. So we have to do what we can to keep them in passable condition. And even though as a bicyclist, I agree it's a pain to ride on, it's a necessary evil. So with the chip seal, you'll see the priorities next year would be the neighborhoods across the Highway 125, so Knapp, Harvest Meadows, those ones. 2023 gets into Western College Place, so west of College Avenue, those areas. 2024 would get into Country States, Autumn Meadows, the area in the South Larch area, and then Southwest 10th. 2025 would be Highland Park, and then 2026 gets into Larch Avenue, the totality of that, and then Northeast C between Larch and Myra. And our REIT 1 pays for that program. Block resurfacing program. This is a formal program. We've had our streets rated by machinery that essentially assigns ratings to it. We made this formal program because since I've been here every year, basically a street would be in bad enough condition where we'd end up repaving a block. So figured it made sense to actually make it into a program. So based on the data from when the streets were driven with that machine, the concept is next year to deal with Southeast 6th from College Date, which is needed because there's a water project that's going to be going on there next year. 2023 gets Southwest 6th on the other side of College. 2024 would deal with Mockingbird. 2025 would deal with Highland Park. And then 2026 and 2027 get out in a Sunset Villa. That is REIT money. For bikes, that project continues the cycle track treatment. We got a grant for 500,000 from TIB. Blue Zones is having this as their demonstration project. So students are going to put temporary markings just to see how it feels and stuff. And it'll be part of the university's volunteer day. But then we're going to come in with the permanent improvements and we'll bid it out shortly. So estimated cost there is 600,000, especially since we don't have to have those delineators anymore. Central College Place is a continuation of the sidewalks that we did this year. The only way we're able to do sidewalks is with grants. So Community Development Block Grant, we got money for next year, and we put in TIB money for some other projects. So you'll see what we're thinking of next year for sure is Southwest 6th, Southwest 8th. 2024 is B Street, and then 2026 is Southwest 1st, and it's prioritized either by federally classified road where we can get TIB money for it, or the low income census block group that meets LMI criteria, which qualifies it for CDBG money. And that's a completely grant funded thing. Broadband project, again, as you saw earlier this meeting, we're trying to get money from everywhere for it. So the concept is that we're trying to land for other folks to pay 95% of it with a 5% local match. A lot of other areas who are in the know are aiming for that. I'm trying to do the same. College Place Post Office crosswalk, this is in here for 2023. The local road safety plan, once we adopt it, that is going to put us on the radar. I actually get the grant for it because even though I submitted this year, we end up not getting enough points because we didn't have an adopted LRSP. Downtown parking lot, I'm waiting to hear from the USDA business program if we got it or not, but if not, we'll continue applying for it. They'll help drive business into College Avenue. We need the shared parking, lowers development costs. Signalization of Stone Creek. Once that develops, we're going to need stoplights so traffic can safely go from the high school and the subdivisions. So that's what this is. We believe it'll be a split between developer impact fee and then city contribution. So that's why it's there. Southeast 9th Street, that's one of our only like gravel roads in town. This has been the subject of a lot of spirited outreach where nearby residents would like to see it improved to more of a urban street as much as possible. So thanks to help of the student under council member Selby's tutelage, we're trying to work on getting a concept of what it could look like and then get community development block grant money at that point to make it happen. Myra Road and Garrison Village Way, this is a joint project between City of Walla Walla and College Place. Well, key thing is trying to get grants for this and then for both cities and a developer for a commercial piece to help out with it. But with all traffic coming from villages and then also from Fort Walla Walla Park, something needs to happen because folks aren't going to 12th or Whitman across the street on bikes and walking. They're crossing right there, and with the traffic count, it's a bad deal. So 546,000 is the estimate on that. Public Works Yard, it just needs like a lot of TLC, frankly. I mean, that yard dates back to essentially before the city was a city. So we do need to upgrade it. There's structures in there from the 1940s and a heat pump that needs to be replaced. So the concept is to position that for improvements in 2024, and that would be split between the utilities since they all share that. TIB, this one, Rose Street, we actually put in for a request for complete street money. And the idea here is to put ped lights on Rose. I ride that a lot on my bike, as do others. It's pitch black out there. It's a safety issue. So that would go and put ped lights in like College Avenue, and then also put a rapid flashing beacon at Damson and Rose, since that is where Valley Transit has their stop at. Whitman Larch, when that developer finally gets going, the concept is put a flashy stop sign there. But then in a couple of years, the traffic counts are such that curb study from a couple of years ago said that really that intersection needs a stoplight. So at that juncture, we believe it'd be a split between street funds, curb grant, and developer fees. 12th and Larch, this one would be out a ways in 2025, and that's just dealing with that intersection, because as we develop, as we grow, more traffic count, and we need better ways of funneling additional traffic. So at that juncture, we would then explore what is the best treatment, which it could take a variety of forms of either a roundabout, a stoplight. There's a variety of ways. And that is one of the key activity areas in that local road safety plan. So we could likely get a sizable portion funded that way. Whitman Drive, this is out toward the tail end of the plan. It's just, fixing the north side of the road so it's of the same condition as the south side, because right now you have half a good street, half of a bad street. And that'd be shy of $1 million, but that's federally classified, so we could get grants for it. Likewise, Whitman Drive, not as big of an issue before the Martinfield path was put in. Now it is a big issue. There's about a block and a half gap where there's like not a multi-use path, not a sidewalk, and I hear about that a lot. So that's something we need to look at, and we can get grant funds for it. Wastewater projects, the big one that you've heard about a multitude of times is the treatment plant. We've wrapped up the engineering. We're doing essentially a public notification on the final engineering and reviewing the plans and such. And we're amassing the funding and grant package to make this thing go. So that's what we're deeply engaged in right now. And it's going to be a hodgepodge of financing between the utility, ecology, federal appropriation. I've put one in through the EDA. I mean, it's going to be a layered cake of grant and loan money. So that's a treatment plant that'll go through tail end of next year into 2023. Lift station number 5, this one is a little bit of a newer one from past years, but Paul notified me about this. This conveys sewage from pretty much all of West College Place toward the treatment plant, but as you can see, it sticks up outside the sidewalk and it's undersized. We really can't get appropriate equipment or staff in there. So a concept would be to essentially abandon this and then actually build a little tiny building, because there is some vacant property a little bit further down the street, so we could actually access it and we wouldn't have a tripping hazard. Public Works Trust Fund, they funded this, so a contract will be to you all shortly. Neighborhood sewer lining program, we budget for this every year. The issue is that the contractors don't want to come out here unless you have a laundry list of sewer lining to do. So really, we need to just group a bunch of projects and do it every other year. Otherwise, it ends up being cost prohibitive. And that's paid for by wastewater utility. You get extra 20 years out of the lines. Central Avenue, this one's a new one as well, and it recently came up. So there's about 2 blocks of homes, believe it or not, that are on a private wastewater line that they share, which is a bit weird. And the concept is that eventually we would have liked to investigate putting in a public line down Central Avenue, because that isn't the best situation. You have several homes on a private line, because then you have issues of who owes what percentage, and maintenance. It's just weird. So and it impairs development. So eventually that is something we would like to strive for, to figure out that central situation. And it recently came to our table because of some interest in subdividing a lot out there. So it's something we want to look at. To get through the last utility here is our water projects. So well number 6, that is going to finally wrap up next year, and we'll actually have a third well, which only gets us back to where we were 5 years ago. But it's funded by an appropriation, the DWSRF money. We're finishing up the local planning process, and then we're going to have the bids for a well house due soon, like toward the end of October. So this is actually on a critical path to finally wrap up. Water main replacement on 12th and Sky. As you recall, we were trying to get this done this year. However, the bidding environment is insane. And there wasn't really interest in doing it, and the price was wacky. So we have 100% engineering. We want to bid this out in the winter, so we actually get a price we can like function with. And the price is about $617,000. You all allocated some ARPA money toward it, and then we have some Public Works Trust Fund money as backfill, matched by water capital. Water replacement, this dovetails to some of that the block replacement. There is essentially a block of water main that's decayed that needs to be traded out. So this is programmed in there for next year. Well number 7, I mean, again, we have a growing community, and yet with that new well, we'll only be back to where we were 5 years ago before we had the well failures. So this would be a new well. So that way, you know, we have resiliency, which is what we're striving for in other areas of town where they aren't right by each other. So the concept is that we have extra land on that property we bought for the lift station for Southwest Sewer. So put the new well out there. That'll help the new development. That'll help Western College Place and the new school. They'll go out there too. And we got Public Works Trust Fund money to do the engineering. So we're on a critical path to do that. West College Place water tower. In past years, I had 2 water tower projects lined out. We believe we can achieve it, instead of doing 2, to do 1, but a bigger one. And the concept would be an elevated tank on the treatment plant property on top of the bluff. So that way you could use gravity to flow water up toward the Homestead, Martin Field, or south down towards Stone Creek. We have trust fund that gave us some money for engineering. So engineering will happen next year. And then we want to position this for construction going out into 2023 and 2024. And right now I'm looking at a FEMA resiliency grant to actually make that happen. And then the well 3 generator, this well, even though it was our one reliable well before we got the other one online, believe it or not, it does not have a generator. So the concept there is to get a FEMA grant. I'm working on that right now. And it has 25% matching, get it where it actually has a generator. And then the repaint the water tower, this one I'm waiting for a go from FEMA. I filed this last year. What this would do is it will allow us to repaint the water tower, same current colors and stuff, just a new coat of paint. Also seismically retrofit it, because there are some seismic concerns. It was outlined in the county hazard plan some years ago, and then fix the outfall. The outfall's undersized and it needs to be properly sized, and then that'll deal with digging up Birch Street, which I went over earlier. Basically sometime in the next year, I've been told by the FEMA people, they don't just say, hey, you got the money. They like trickle out the money through this program as they have it available. So I've been told at some point in the next year, they will let us know that it's our turn essentially, and then we'll be ready to go. And that's a 75-25 split. So with that, there's the acronyms, and that is the draft plan in its current form. Is there any questions, comments, thoughts?
75 pages for a 2 square mile city. Wow. Okay, Councilmember Bobbitt.
Mike, how much time do you spend looking at all this stuff?
Well, I mean, since I've been here a couple of years now, it's actually like, it's pretty plug and play now. Early on, I mean, it was a lot, but now not too much anymore.
Well, I felt that was a very comprehensive plan, and I'm going to be referencing this document. But well done. Thank you.
Thanks.
Absolutely amazing. Mr. Cleveland,
No questions, but great work. It's an awesome plan. Thank you.
Ms. Selby,
No questions, but I've had to look at a lot of these over the years, and it's rare that you actually find them this well thought out with this level of detail. And that's, I think, why we get so many of these grants, because
Right.
Mike has our needs organized so nicely. So thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Sherman,
No questions. Thanks for all of that, Mike.
Yep.
and Ms. Boyle.
No questions. Great work, Mike.
Thanks.
All right, Mike, once again, that was amazing. And it helps, for me, it really helps me realize everything that it takes to keep our city functioning. It's just amazing. Okay. But wait, there's more.
Yeah. Not that painful though. These other two are shorter. So yeah.
All right. So let's go on to the after the fiscal year 2022 to 27 equipment replacement plan.
Okay, thank you. So with the equipment replacement plan, very similar concept, except with equipment instead of capital. And in this case, it goes through the equipment needs for each department, typically above 5,000, and it's organized in quite similar fashion. So as you'll see in this booklet, organized very similar with table of contents. And then budget means that it's going to occur in 2022. The COVID delay was if the after effects of COVID are messing up the acquisition, or we feel it could be endangered because of that. And then the plan means that it'll occur sometime in the 6-year planning window. Going to page 5, you can see our completed equipment replacements. The Jacobs contract addendums working great. That's good that we don't have to deal with equipment out the treatment plant anymore. That was a magical day that happened. And then the police vehicle leasing, that's going decent. And then the grader, we finally replaced the grader from the mid-70s, where we have one that's actually of this era. So that's good. So going into the breakout of who gets what where, fiscal year 2022, as you can see, the majority of our equipment replacement needs actually end up going to fire department because their equipment's really expensive. In fiscal years 2022 to 2027, it shrinks a little bit more of that fire allocation, but once again, you can see right there that even in the 6-year planning horizon, 31% goes to fire. And keep in mind that's funded by current expense. So I mean, even though the equipment replacement fund ends up funding this equipment, you have to remember it's transfers coming out of current expense for fire. So this is something to keep note of. Equipment replacement plan summary, you can see the breakout here. Fire department is slated at 1.2 million. Now what's driving a lot of this is, as you may recall, we allocated some federal ARPA grant money to get ahead and actually get some equipment, so that way we don't have to take out a bond note. So that's a major thing. And then the other ones are pretty much in line with what you would see in subsequent years. And I'll go over them as we get deeper in. 2022 to 2027, you can see it goes up to about 5.2 million. And the largest share goes to fire department at 1.6, followed up by storm, just shy of 1 million, and then wastewater and streets. The prioritization, same concept as the capital plan. High means it needs to happen, otherwise it could impact our fire insurance ratings or our ability to maintain stuff. Medium means that we'll try to get it, but it's going to be as resources are available. And low basically means that it's being driven by a grant or something. So getting into equipment replacements. 2022, and this will end up probably dovetailing into work we're doing with council chambers, is getting a new generator for the city hall campus. Because when you have these municipal facilities, you're supposed to, have generators and stuff if you end up dealing with a disaster. We have a generator, but right now it basically powers 2 outlets. And I mean, if you're in a disaster, that's not really too useful at that point. So we need a new generator. And then going out into 2026, there'll be some replacements on the side of building department vehicles. Fire department, a lot of stuff going on there. So we have the turnouts, the SCBAs, 2022, a lot of stuff going down. So fire marshal and fire captain replacing those vehicles. Robert mentioned that earlier. Brush truck, ambulance. The ambulance, I mean, keep in mind when we started the ambulance, those were used ambulances. We did not buy those new. So one is I believe 9 years old. The other one's 18 years old. And with our call volumes as high as they are, that definitely puts wear and tear on an 18-year-old ambulance. And then fire truck replacement, that would have been out a year, but since we have ARPA, we're able to pull a trigger on that sooner. FY 2024 would be dealing with the other ambulance because you need a spare when you're running an ambulance. Police department, pretty much it's continuing to move the whole fleet of vehicles to the lease model. Works out great. I hear no complaints about it. So basically it's phasing out the last vehicles that were the used state patrol ones and getting them with the lease model. Public Works Parks in 2022, replacing the pickup. This was slated for this year, but yeah, finding vehicles this year has been fascinating. 2025 would be lawnmower and 2027 would be trailer. Stormwater, a lot of this is being driven because we're a new permittee and they really want to see us in compliance. So we're filing a grant right now for a Vactor. So we end up getting the used Vactor from wastewater, but they want to see improvement. So we are filing that grant application and make that happen. And then 2023, replace the TV van and then a Ford Explorer. So the total is just shy of $1 million. Streets, FY 2022, trying to move ahead with that stellar that you all approved in the ARPA grant allocations. Again, the issue right now is sourcing, because with all this money hitting the streets, pretty much everyone's buying everything. It's making sourcing anything a nightmare. And then replacing the flusher. 2023 gets into a pickup and a utility truck. 2024 gets to a tilt trailer. 2025 is a bucket truck. 2026 is a compressor, and then 2027 is a trailer and a tractor. So the amount there is about $654,000. Wastewater is very straightforward because we essentially have contracted all that out. So that's Jacob's group problem. And the costs, which you can see in the summary spreadsheet, it's definitely a lot cheaper than when we were buying everything on our own. And based on historical trends for this add-on contract, I've factored in about 1% inflationary factor year on that component of the contract. And then the water division deals with just a pickup in 2022, and then 2023, utility truck with a total count of about 74,000, which is fairly small. So with that is the draft equipment replacement plan. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Any questions, Councilmember Bobbitt?
Again, Mike, well done. Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Cleveland?
No questions?
Ms. Selby?
No questions.
Ms. Sherman?
Questions? Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Ms. Boyle?
No questions.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Next is the 2022 to 27 draft information technology plan.
Okay, once again, same concept, except this time with information technology stuff. So this deals with hardware, software, and then some of the staffing we have related to the IT. And I should mention only 6-year plans. You have the booklet form, but in each of these agenda items, there's a summary spreadsheet. So if you want to look at the booklet, look at the summary spreadsheet, and it goes over everything. So IT planning is set up very much the same way, just tying to our principles, which is customer service, workflow improvements, transparency, security, and then information and records management, and then going from there. The existing environment, we've been doing really well. So as you know, past couple of years, I was trying to phase out our old Dell computers. We basically have like caught up. We're now, I view it as being like no longer in catch-up mode, but we're replacing them as you would like a normal agency on a 7-year rotational basis, because that's what they're warranted by Dell. The key thing this year, it was in the capital plan, but I just put it as a note, is the AV system thing is a big deal, and that's going to be happening very soon because the bids are due soon. A lot of this is going to be software maintenance, and a lot of this is cloud software, so it doesn't put a drag on our server. I will say there are some large scale costs though this year, and you'll see as we get deeper into it. Expense timeline, you can see a history and then where we're going for the next 6 years. You can see that the next 2 years are the highest, and a lot of this is getting into our needs from a finance perspective, and then later on community development, which I'll get to when I get into those respective sections. As you can see, in 2021, we were able to achieve a lot, and thanks to the CARES money, and then grants we got to fix our GIS system, and then getting the body cameras. So there's a lot of work done on the IT perspective. FY 2022, you can see the largest expense with IT ends up being out of like administration and finance, because again, we're doing a lot of the reporting work and work on behalf of a lot of the other departments for grants and stuff. So therefore, there's a lot of software used to get to those endeavors. And then it's followed up by police, and then community development, fire, and then public works. Going for 6 years, again, project out 6 years, finance and administration's 1.1 million, followed by community development, and then police, and then public works and fire. Prioritization is on the same concept. High means we need it, just due to either software not being supported anymore, the threat of, or just to essentially follow state law. Medium means we're trying to make it easier, I would say, on the customer, but it's not like do or die. And then low means it yield efficiencies, but it's cost prohibitive, and it will be driven by a grant or through some other means. Administration, as you can see, just continuing the 7-year plan. If you look to the past plans, you'll notice our computer replacement costs are quite a bit lower than in past years, because again, we're caught up now, so it's basically following the pattern. Council chambers, that's going to be the big thing, so we can do hybrid meetings and in general function how a lot of other cities do. I mean, that's why City of Walla Walla was able to go to hybrid meetings, because I don't know if they had a crystal ball or what, but they invested in a quite nice system well before COVID. And then the key thing is doing software maintenance, and the big one is replacing our financial software. So for, probably 2 decades, we've used this program called Bias. And the issue with Bias is they were recently bought out by a new software called Springbrook. Our current software is server-based. This new one is cloud-based. What it boils down to is this new software company basically said, oh, well, for you to continue using our software, but except now it will be on the cloud, but there aren't really improvements. And some of the quirks of what you use may not be allowed in the new program. For that honor, they want us to pay between 40 and 50,000 extra a year. So the issue there is that basically forces the question of is this new Springbrook thing essentially the best software or not? And we have not committed to upgrading the Springbrook, but they've made veiled threats that at some point they're going to stop essentially updating and maintaining BIOS, which is going to put us in a pickle. So we have a cross-department ERP team evaluating what could be replacements, and hopefully we'll have a recommendation as we get later into the budget in November. But the onboarding, because I mean, these ERP systems are not like cheap. We believe would be 100,000, and then in subsequent years it would fall to 40. However, we would achieve efficiencies because I believe we'll be able to replace BIOS, Questica, elements of iWork, and potentially Document Locator with a like umbrella program that does everything. The other key thing is get this acquire know before software, and it has to do some phishing testing, because I don't know if you pay attention recently, but a number of cities are getting phished, and then they have their entire systems crippled. So I would like to get ahead of that if we could. 2026 would be just to replace the server, and that's a traditional schedule. And then staffing would be Intermountain Education District, continue what we have. AWC, I would probably lower this one to a tier 1. Right now we're tier 2, but we moved light years ahead because we actually got a federal pipeline grant where JUB completely fumigated our whole GIS system. Is a grant for 110,000. So we don't need their help as much. Like, it's still good to have, but the critical nature of it is a lot less since our whole system was fumigated. Administration and finance, you can see here a lot of this is software maintenance. A lot of this is tied to our economic development, our processes for public records requests, website, social media, Zoom. It all has a maintenance cost. Community development, we want to propose doing some improvements that will increase some productivity. So using a software called Bluebeam, where staff would be able to mark up building plans on the actual plans, and several users could be in at the same time. Because right now, to a degree, we're trying to use Adobe and other softwares, and it's creating a nightmare. And then a TV, so that way when we have the development team meeting, everyone can sit around a table and you can actually see what you're looking at, because a lot of these plans are very complex. And then the concept is not next year, but the year after, once we arrive on an ERP system that works, if everyone's pleased with it, then onboard community development. Because my concern about going for both at the same year is, I mean, again, you have limited funds, so you have prioritized. Software maintenance would be Azavar for short-term vacation rental. That's fairly straightforward. And SurveyMonkey, because we use that to do surveys on a lot of things. Fire department, computer replacement plan, and just Firehouse software, much like BIOS, got bought out by another software provider. And much like they always do, they tend to raise the fees because they can. So that is an issue. So we'll be working on that. Police department, again, just our yearly payout of the body cameras. And then we have every other year, we try to put in a new security camera, and we basically go a Wild Horse Foundation or Walmart and ask them to give us a grant for a camera. So the concept is next year to do a request for a camera at Meadowbrook and Lamperty. 2 years later, Whitman and Academy Way. 2 years later, 12th and Larch. And then net motion is needed just because that's needed to keep our accreditation. Public Works Department, we needed to get an Autodesk license for Spencer, because right now there isn't a way for us in our own organization to maintain our street standards and so forth. This will allow us to be able to do a lot of that in-house so we get efficiencies. Software maintenance for iWork for the asset management, and then the GIS, which you just need. That's, yeah, Esri's only game in town, so pretty much everyone's stuck paying Esri. So with that, that is the draft plan. Is there any questions, comments, thoughts?
Mr. Bobbitt,
And Mike, well, thanks.
Thanks.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions?
Ms. Selby,
No questions.
Ms. Sherman,
No questions. Thanks, Mike.
Ms. Boyle.
No questions.
All right. Okay, let's see. We have one more, and it's the draft of the fiscal year 2022 to 27 state and federal legislative agenda. Mike, you need a glass of water? You doing okay?
I'm doing okay, so I'll be able to get through this. So,
all right, carry on.
Yep. So the reason I have this in front of you is because in order for us to be effective in Olympia and federally, we need to get this out by November at the latest, because otherwise, if you get out December or later, to be frank, it's a joke at that point, because legislators are already figuring out what are their priorities and what they're going to support and what they won't. So I do a state one and a federal one. If you recall a couple meetings ago, Brian Enslow, our lobbyist, he provided basically the general environment of Olympia right now. And then this last biennium, I actually have served on the Association of Washington Cities Legislative Affairs Committee, so crafting what their agenda is. So I'll go over our state one first, then our federal one. There's some changes, but a lot of this is quite a bit of carryover. So key issues from economic development is protecting the agencies we get our grant money from, because they love to sweep the money and then essentially act like, oh, well, we didn't do it, so go find your own money somewhere else. Well, that ends up hurting everyone. So we need to, even though they're doing very well monetarily, we need to maintain vigilance, because they love to sweep money and then that causes issues. The other thing is to support investment into broadband in areas with service gaps. One of the things that I will say is a little bit irritating with how the state is essentially divvying up some of their broadband money is they're either putting money in these large urban areas that already have decent broadband, but there's more people, or they're giving a ton of money in areas that hardly have any people, like Malden, where they're giving like Malden like almost like $2 million, and Malden has like about 200 people on it. So we're in this like weird sweet spot with them where we're a middle-sized community, and they aren't really, I would say, prioritizing areas with gaps. Because like, for instance, right now here, like I'm in City Hall because the internet works good, but then in other areas of town, not so much. So we need to standardize that. Other key thing supports the transportation package. As you recall, last year we were trying to get them to pass it. It looked like it was going to pass, and then it just like vanished for some reason. So they need to finish that up. The Cedar project, which I mentioned, that was in the transportation package, and then it like disappeared. So it affected us. Culverts, and this is on EWC's agenda. Yeah, same with the transportation plan. The state has funded fixing their own culverts, but a lot of cities are saying, well, what good is that? If you fix your culvert, yeah, my culvert is a couple feet down and we're just left to our own devices. So trying to advocate that they actually earmark money to deal with culverts as well. Multifamily tax exemption. this got stuck again last year, and I don't know why there's such heartburn over this. Because right now you could tell it was targeted toward the special interest because the current multifamily says that you're either in a county above 80,000 people, or you're in a city above 20,000 people, or you're basically in a county seat. So this one gives me heartburn because where I previously managed Colfax, they were a county seat, so they can do multifamily tax exemption, yet we can't. That's very unfair, so we need to clean that up. Support US 12 phase A. I mean, we really need that to happen now that phase 7's going, because we have like a 10-mile gap. And until that gets fixed, we're going to have economic development issues because of freight. And then the alternative paths for PCBs, we keep that in there. General government, there's starting to be discussion about fumigating the Growth Management Act. So to include some new authority and then means to expand UGAs in responsible situations. And specifically trying to get this where it gives like some cities more of a say at the table with the counties. Because right now we can suggest to the counties, but at the end of the day, they approve, and they can either approve it or tell us not to, and then we're basically left with nowhere to develop. So getting that in there is a big thing. Property tax, to tie it to an inflationary index rather than 1%. A lot of other states do this. We don't. It's something that needs to be looked at. Public Records Act, they've made changes to that and open public meetings, but they need to continue to reflect the current era. Municipal Research Services aren't fully fund that. Every year they love to threaten that they'll pull money, and they need to keep funding that. Defend local control. I mean, again, they try to put mandates on us and handcuff us, but yet we're left to implement. So we're left to implement, we should have some form of local control. The recycling, to support that. So to keep that going and figure out how to bring that back. And basin disposal is going to be here in a couple meetings that actually shed light on that one. Unfunded mandates, naturally against that because it impairs our ability to actually pay for things. Public safety and human services, there's quite a bit in here. So again, clarification of civil standards with that police bill that passed, because there is a lot of stuff in there and it's evident that a lot of people didn't read half of what was in it. So fixing that. Then the other thing is supporting the need to retain local control over the city law enforcement and policy decisions, because over time that tends to be bleeding away. So we need to support that. Also support increase for the law enforcement academy because they're still running a feeble amount of classes. They need more. Also a direct funding for the city's administered diversion programs, because in that new bill, they mandate a variety of diversion programs, which are great, but they don't have a mechanism to actually pay for it. So once again, it's an unfunded mandate. And then this House Bill 1202 basically puts like triple city liability for a variety of police actions, and that needs to be retooled. So opposing it in its current form and being at the table for some sort of compromise. Priorities that have changed a little bit because of our success from past years. Big one's a treatment plant. That's a hodgepodge of money, and we need grant money from everywhere. So Fed, state, pretty much anyone with a checkbook needs to help on that one. So that's 25 million. Western College Place water system, that's 2 projects. Well number 7's 3.5. The tank is another 3.5. We need more storage for our water. I mean, we saw how quickly the water ran out when we had our little water situation a month ago. And most cities usually have about 48 hours supply. So I mean, that demonstrates the fact that we need to get on that. Stormwater decant facility, State Department of Ecology is bugging us about that. So if they want it, they need to go give us a grant for it pretty much. So that ends up being 1.5 million. And then Southeast 12th, we continue a bug TIB and the feds for it, but that amounts to 4.3. So that's the state one. The federal one is very similar with the capital priorities. I'll just go through it briefly. Basically getting them actually past the infrastructure bill finally, that would be a good thing. So we could get what's in that list. Also simplifying the process for pursuing federal grants, because you almost need a team of many people to get USDA money. I'm sure Brian can attest to that. So they need to simplify that. Same with the HUD Community Development Block Grant. Because I will tell you the process of getting this money when I was in Illinois from the county versus the state was like night and day. Then the PCB issue, that's in there, the supporting the local control, passage of legislation about the mental health to just permit more programs that's dramatically needed. Highway 12 Phase 8, that one, City of Walla Walla with the 125 and Myra Road intersection, but that's caveated on if we get that left turn lane on commercial, and that's been in all of the documents we have with them. So that's key. Also the recycling and then opposing the unfunded mandates. And you'll see with each of these, it has the quick facts about population, household income, poverty rate, all of that. The thing I will note is with the population, because I'm sure people may have caught this, our population went down slightly. Reason it went down slightly is unfortunately, when they did the census, the university wasn't fully back in session because of COVID. So pretty much any community that's a college town is showing us quite a bit of population decrease. I would say we end up lucky because our population in a good year like last year was about 9,800. So our population decrease isn't near like what other communities like us are. Like City of Pullman, their population deviation was of almost like 7,000. So, and that's bad because again, when you get federal and state money or support, that's on a per capita basis. So that's something to really watch. So that is what the agendas are. If there's any questions, comments, or thoughts, please let me know.
All right, Mr. Bobbitt,
No questions. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Mr. Cleveland,
No questions.
Ms. Selby,
Is there any effort to look at coming up with funding for mental health issues? Because along with the diversion programs, we just don't have enough mental health facilities in this state, and providing them would go a long ways towards dealing with a lot of the issues that the police are dealing with, I think.
Yeah, that was actually a statement within the federal and the state one. We do have that in support of that. There is legislation floating around, not so much sadly at the federal level, but at the state level there is. What we're really going to have to watch is what happens with it, because the last time they actually attempted to do something, they had all those issues at like Eastern and Western State Mental Hospital, and it basically ended up co-opting all the money that was going to go to the mental health programs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we also don't want it to just turn into another unfunded mandate.
Yeah.
So it needs to be looking at a revenue source, not just, what's needed.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Sherman,
No questions. Thank you.
and Ms. Boyle.
No questions.
All right, thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Okay, moving on, informational reports. There are 2 of them in your packet, so please do review those at your convenience. We do not have any executive sessions. So is there any other business for the good of the order? All right, not going to give you too much time to think about that. Is there a motion to adjourn?
It's Councilmember Selby, so move.
There's a second?
Councilmember Boyle, I'll second.
Thank you. All right, if there's no objections, the meeting is adjourned at 9:12 p.m. Have a good night, everyone.